In this session, we're going to look at the different camera options, and I'm going to advise you on which type's best for food photography. There are so many options on the market now, and it can be really confusing and could work out quite expensive if you go for the wrong type of camera. Let's take a look at the different types of cameras available. The first two options here, the DSLR and the mirrorless, are both the types of cameras that have interchangeable lenses. And this is what you really need for food photography. It's the lenses that give you the creative options, and there's going to be a lot more on this later. DSLR means digital single lens reflex, and these cameras have been around a long time, first in film versions and then in digital formats. The SLR part is referring to a moving mirror inside the camera that pivots to allow you to see the image the right way up in the viewfinder. Now, more recent developments have led to the introduction of the mirrorless camera, which relies on electronics to display the image the right way up for you. With no need for a mirror, the camera can be much smaller and lighter, and as they perform as well as DSLRs, they're very popular. Bridge and compact cameras both have lenses that can't be removed. Now, the disadvantage with this is that their lenses don't usually offer the option to create those really lovely soft focus backgrounds. They're also not as good for indoor photography. Bridge cameras usually have got a longer zoom and a few more functions, and they're called a bridge camera because they bridge the gap between the posh camera and the little compact camera. And then there's the smartphone, which can play a role in food photography. In this image taken on a food photography workshop, you can see people using both DSLRs and smartphones. However, each camera format is more suited to particular situations because they've both got their disadvantages, particularly the smartphone. So let's take a quick look at the pros and cons of both. First, let's take a look at cameras that have interchangeable lenses, so either the DSLR or the mirrorless format, depending on what you've decided to go with. Now, compared to a phone, these will give you much better quality images and larger file sizes as well. And this is particularly important if you plan to print your images or use them in a very large format. One of the most attractive and highly desirable creative looks in food photography is the soft focus background, and you can see in this shot on the right that we've got a jar of rhubarb chili jam and some nice slices of bread, sourdough bread, and then you've got the soft focus rhubarb in the background, and that works really nicely because it makes your subject stand out clearly. It gives your image depth and stops it looking flat and 2D, and it looks really appealing. Low light photography is particularly challenging, and most of the time we are shooting food indoors where the light is less good. With a DSLR or a mirrorless camera and the right kind of lens, you can shoot in extremely low light conditions like this without flash and get some really lovely results. The main downside to these kinds of cameras is that you do have to take the time to learn how to use them and to get off the auto setting. Now, it can be quite expensive to buy a good camera and some lenses, but I'll guide you through exactly what you need and help you to avoid any expensive mistakes. The results really are worth it. Let's move on to smartphones now. They are really quick and easy to use, very simple. It's just a case of pointing the camera at the subject, pressing the shutter button, and that's it. And they do produce surprisingly good quality images, even more so with the recent smartphones. And it's great because you can edit and post to social media very quickly. However, it is much harder to produce soft focus backgrounds when you use your phone. And if you do have a setting to simulate this on your phone, you will have far less control than you do with a camera. The shot on the left here has been taken with a phone, and you can see how flat it looks in comparison to the image on the right that was taken with a mirrorless camera. The wide-angle lens of a phone can also distort the subject, making things that are close to the camera appear larger and causing lines in your image to be distorted as well. You'll get smaller file sizes when you use a phone. Not really a problem if you're just uploading the images straight to Instagram, Facebook or your website, but if you're planning to print them and need a high resolution, you may find that you've not got the detail that you need. And I find that the colour can be less accurate with my phone. Colours can be a bit more saturated than I see them, and they're just not quite representative of what is in front of me. That's much easier to control when you use a camera. My advice would be to use a smartphone for the overhead shots, the flat lays, unless you really need to get some high quality images that you're going to print. But if you're putting them to social media, up onto your website, a phone will do a really good job of shooting flat lays for you. Makes the whole process very simple. Whereas when you use a camera, you will need to use a tripod and it all takes longer to set up. And I would use a DSLR or a mirrorless camera for everything else.